What's her name? Bluma Reiza Bas Aaron Aryeh HaKoyen passed away. That's Rebbetzin Horowitz from the 14th Avenue Aguda, where many, many years I said shir. Her neshama should have an aliyah. We are dedicated by Baruch Ian, Lili Nishmas Yaakov Chaim Ben Abba, Esther Bas Yona, Avram Shmuel HaKoyen, Avram Ben Shmuel HaKoyen, and Lefur Shalema Feliba Bas Anya, by Sholem Fogel, Lili Nishmas Yaakov Zeb Ben Yehuda, Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef, Tzivya Miriam Bas God, Yosef Ben Siyam Ben Yaakov Zeb, and for a good shidduch for Chaya Tzivya Bas Shoshana Gittel, by A.B. Spryler for Shalema for Taiba Reiza Bas Hinda, and for a great shidduch for their daughter and grandchildren. We are sponsored for the spiritual, emotional, and physical protection for Yeshua Menachem Mendel, Ben Be'el Shendel Rivka, and by Eddie Chazan for safety of Klal Yisrael, for our brave soldiers, that they should be successful and safe, and by Menachem Yemansky, that all those that are looking for a zivik should find it quickly and easily. For Shalema for Shoshana Basadina, Rabbi Sai, I have good news. The good news is that tonight's daf is nowhere as hard as last night's daf. Last night's daf was very hard. It wasn't hard, it was very hard. We begin on the very top. We begin on the very top of Daf Ayin Daled Amud Aleph.
Rabbi Weiss, Refuah Shlema, my mother Leah, Isha Leah Bas Edel Minka.
Leah Bas Edel Minka, Refuah Shlema, B'Seich Shechel Yisrael. We learn, since it's Elul, especially, we learn all the time this way, but especially in Elul, we learn it with the tefillah that Hashem should give us a good year, healthy, with Menuchas HaNefesh, that this is what we should be able to do the whole next year. And we learn to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Dibarta Bam, La'asais Nachas Ruach Liyotzreinu. Now, Elu Asurin V'oisim B'kolshu. Now, we'll learn like Ravin, that Min B'minoi Asas B'mashu. So, Elu Asurin, the following matters aser, and they oiser with the smallest amount. Now, we'll also see that we're talking over here about Isuri Hana and a Dover Shebeminyan, something that is counted. And since it's counted, it's choshev and it's not bottle. So, Elu Asurin, the following items are asabana, v'oisrin b'kolshu, and when they get mixed up in a group, they asa the group even if it's 1,000 to 1. Yayin esech, wine that was used as a libation. V'avodas kechavim, a figurine that was worshipped, that gets mixed up with a whole bunch of other figurines. V'ayris levuvin, and hides that they tore out the heart. If it gets mixed up with other hides that they didn't use for Avoda Zara but had such a tear. V'shar niskel, a shar that had to be stoned because it killed someone and got mixed up with other oxen. Ve'egla rufa, now this simply means that when there was an unsolved homicide, so they took a heifer and they broke its neck, and many hold that it becomes usher even when it's alive, when they bring it down to the Nachal Eisen, to the Rocky Ravine. And if it gets mixed up afterwards in other calves, they're all usher. The tzipore mitzara, the birds of the mitzara in the purification of the leper. This week's parsha we talk about leprosy. The tzipore mitzara, they shechted one bird, and then they took a live bird and they dipped it in its blood. So as soon as they separate the birds, they become asr. And if it gets mixed up in other birds, they're all asr. V'seir nazir, the hair of a nazir that gets mixed up with other hair. Or peter chamar, the firstborn donkey. Or basar b'chalav, meat that was cooked with milk that got mixed up with other meat. Or sarah mishtaleach, the goat that was sent away to Azazel, that becomes asa b'hana if it gets mixed up with other goats. The chulin shenishchatu b'asara, chulin that was slaughtered in the temple courtyard, which is asa b'hana, that gets mixed up with other meat. Harielu asurin, they're asa b'hana, v'oisun b'koshu, and they asur others even with a small amount. So the Gemara wants to know what's unique about the cases of our Mishnah. Tana mai kachoshiv, what is unique about these cases? Minyan kachoshiv, if it's because it's things sold by unit. So listening nami chatichas nevela, pieces of nevela that gets mixed up with other pieces. Now nevela is only asa b'achila, it's not asa b'hana. But if the distinguishing factor is that it's sold by unit, so it should have counted the chatichas of nevela. On the other hand, well, what else is Yisur Hana? Chametz b'Pesach is also b'Hana. Listening nami chametz b'Pesach, it's also also b'Hana. So if dough that's leaven gets mixed up with all kinds of other dough, it's also, says the Gemara, you know what? We need both. It needs to have both features. It has to be a davish b'minyan. It has to be something that's sold by unit, and the Yisur Hana. Now the problem is Arla is Asr B'Hana, and there's a famous Mishnah that tells us that Egoze Badan, the nuts, Egoze Perech, the nuts of Perech and Rimone Badan, and the pomegranates of Badan, they're very, very choshev, and they're sold by unit. You know, like for example, when you buy the fruit for Rosh Hashanah, the special Shechionus, they're sold by piece. They're sold by unit. So the nuts of Badan and the nuts of Perech and the pomegranates of Badan, they're sold by unit. And if they're older, they're also b'hana, so then it should have included that in the Mishnah. V'lisnei egoizei Perech v'rimoinei Badan, the davish b'minyan, they're sold by unit, v'yisur hano. Says the Gemara, that's okay. That, you know why it doesn't say it over here? Because that was already covered. Hatanulei hasam, it was already taught. It's a Mishnah in Arla, which is quoted in different places in Shas. Says the Gemara, Hatanulei hasam, haroy arla arla, those things that are sold by unit that are arla, like nuts and pomegranates, they're not bottled. And haroy l'klei akerem, klei akerem. And those items that are not arla, but could be klei akerem, could be the forbidden mixture of the minyard. If they are sold by unit, they're not going to be bottled either. The mentions over there certain things that are not neutralized: Greek gourd, cabbage, and beets. Now that's not arla, but it could be forbidden with klei akerem, a forbidden mixture of vineyard when you plant the beets with the vine or the Greek gourds. So it already covers them. Says the Gemara, but what about v'lisnei kikarish shel balabayis? Why doesn't it say homemade chalas? Homemade chalas are sold by unit. They're very choshev. And if it's Pesach, it's Yisur Hana. V'lisnei kikarish shel balabayis l'inyan chametz b'Pesach. Now you'll say, well, how is it going to get mixed up? You have to know that the Svardim, they have pita. that's kosher for Pesach. It looks like pita. It looks like pita, and they could have homemade pita that's chametz, and then the pita that's unleavened, and they could get mixed up. Says the Gemara, well, who says that a homemade challah is a davar shebeminyan? It's sold by unit. Rabbi Kiva. Man shmat lei damalei Rabbi Kiva. That's also covered over there in Arla. Hatanalei hasam Rabbi Kiva ma'isif af kikara shel balabayis. That loaves of the balabayis cannot be neutralized. So it's already covered that. Hare elu, only these are not neutralized. What is hare elu? Elu is a miut. Hare elu l'm'utei mai. L'm'utei davar shebeminyan v'lav yisrana. Something that's sold by unit which is not yisrana, like chaticha shel nevela, like slices of nevela. Inami l'm'utei yisrana, something that's also ba'ana, but v'loi davar shebeminyan. It's not sold by unit. It might be dates of Arla, but it's not sold by unit, and therefore it is neutralized. Now, says the yes.
How come we're learning this Mishnah, or how come the Mishnah is placed all the way at the end of everything? It seems to be this Mishnah should be much earlier, because a lot of what we were dealing with were mixtures.
Well, I mean, we were dealing with mixtures of the wine itself, and now we're dealing with mixtures of casks. So it's a little bit of a different situation.
Well, these are casks. I thought it was the wine itself.
No. Now,
Okay.
Yayin nesech shenafel labar. So now we have the next case, where wine falls into the vat. Now, where wine falls into the vat, so kulay asabana. This is like the simple understanding of Ravin, is that a small amount of yayin nesech, since it's min b'minai, it's asa b'mashu, and that small amount of wine disqualifies the entire vat. Reb Shimon Gamliel says, no. What we do is we could sell the whole vat to a guy, minus the small amount of yayin nesach that fell into it. Reb Shimon Gamliel Aimer Yemacher Kula Loive Kechavim Chutz Midmei Yayin Nesach Shabai. So if, let's say, a cup of yayin nesach falls into the whole vat, you could sell the whole vat to a guy, minus the cup of yayin nesach, which is the Yisrei Hana. So Amar Rav halacha Reb Shimon Gamliel, and here the Gemara makes the distinction that I told Marshall. Amar Rav halacha Reb Shimon Gamliel chavyus b'chavyus. If one barrel of yayin nesach gets mixed up with 100 barrels of regular wine, you could sell the 100 barrels minus the 1 barrel of yayin nesach. Avalo yayin b'yayin. But if wine gets mixed up in the wine, then the whole wine becomes asa b'hana. B'Shmuel Amar, Shmuel says, no, afilu yayin b'yayin. The halach is like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, even where wine falls into the wine, you could sell the whole wine of heter minus the cup of yayin nesach that fell in. V'chein Amar Rabba Babachana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, afilu yayin b'yayin. The halach is like Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, even wine and wine. V'chein Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Nosson, Amar Rav Chanina, afilu yayin b'yayin. V'chein Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Ba'avu, afilu yayin b'yayin. Amar Rav Nachman, halacha l'maisa. Halacha l'maisa is yayin nesech, which is stringent. Yayin b'yayin aser. If a cup of yayin nesech falls into a barrel of wine, the whole barrel becomes aser. Chavyus b'chavyus mutter. But if one barrel of yayin nesech gets mixed up with 100 barrels of regular wine, you could sell the 100 barrels minus that 1 barrel. But that's only actual wine that was poured for a libation that fell into regular wine. Stam yayin. But if it was just wine that was owned by a guy, we don't know if he offered a libation, then afilu yayin b'yayin mutter. Even if a cup of wine falls into the wine itself, we could sell all the wine except for the price of that cup of wine. Okay, since we have 28 Zoomers, we're going to welcome Baruch Ian in, Menachem Umansky, Marshall Castle, Ruven Palak, Yaakov Warman, Yitzhak Fuchs, Saba, Gedalia Engel, Shelley Zeitland, Shalom Fogel, Shimon Klein, Yisrael Fisher, Dr. Black, A.B. Spry, Rabbi Kranz, Barry Cement, Eddie Chazan, Danny Vogel, Avigdor Fried, Moshe Lehman, Yitzi Muller, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, Avram Rezepkowitz, Nachman Chapler, Ilya Shutman, Elia Yaffe, and David Helfgott. Here in the shul, we have Berish Kesselman, we have Michal Avram Chavin and Ruvain Shannon, bringing it to a very healthy number of 31. As we turn the page to Ayin Daled Amid Beis, we will be, the plan is at least, is we will be broadcasting tomorrow night again from South Fallsburg up in the country. My wife and I will be going back there for another 2 days. The plan is to be back here in the shul for Wednesday night for the start of Hurriyas and for the Chumashir. That is the plan. The start time, actually really the start time should have even been earlier this week. The reason why I made it later is because tomorrow night and Tuesday night I'm probably going to have to look for a minyan and probably daven by Nicholsburg and Woodburn, so I'll have to travel back after the minyan. That's why I left myself an extra 10 minutes. Now, Gas Shel Evan, a stone press, Shezovsa Oived Kechav, that a guy coated it with pitch. Now, when they coat it with pitch, the pitch has a bad smell. So in order to diffuse that smell, they added wine to it. And since they added wine and the guy touched the wine, it's aser. So in order to be able to use the press, menagva, one has to scour it with hot ash and water. And then v'hitayra. And then the word tahira is just like a borrowed word. We're not talking about tuma, but then it is freed from its forbidden wine. If it's vishel eitz, if it's of wood, so Rebbe says it's enough yanagev, it's enough to scour it. You have to peel off the pitch. Vishel cheres, but if it's as earthenware, now earthenware, it gets absorbed into the earthenware. Afal pi shekalaf esazefes, even though you peeled off the pitch, harizu asura, it's still forbidden.
They glazed it. Do the same thing?
No, the glaze, they don't put wine in the glaze. Amarav, dafka zefasa, it's only if they coated it with pitch. Aval darach ba'Allah, if in the untreated wine press, they trod grapes there, you don't have to scour it. All you have to do is rinse it off, and that's enough. So the Gemara says, Pshita, Zafasa Tanan, which implies only if they coated it with pitch. Says no, Mao the same who had afilu darchba, even if he trod grapes in there, Vaidiktani Zafasa, because Urcha de Milsa Katani, that's the normal way. Kamash Malan, that no, if they just trod grapes there and it wasn't coated with the pitch, all they have to do is rinse it out. Ikidamre, others say, Amarava Dafka Zafasa. It's only if all they did was coat it with pitch. Aval darachba, but if after they coated it with pitch, they trod grapes there, then leisagila beniguv. Then it's not enough to scour it. Then the pitch has to be removed. So the Gemara says pshita zafasa tanan. It says coating it with pitch. It says no, mao desema. I might think huadin dafilu darachba. The truth of the matter is, it would be the same if the idol worshiper also trod upon grapes. V'haidik tani zafasa urcha de milsa katani. Because it's normal that the yid should allow the guy to coat it with pitch, but not to trod grapes there. Kamash malan, no. Dafka zafasa. Aval darchba, but if he trod the grapes in it, like sagala benigov, it's not enough to scour it, but he has to actually peel off the pitch. Ki Yehuda also the kamid Reb Chia. This is an interesting case. You know, Reb Chia was the uncle of Rav. So here we have the great Gadol Adar in his younger age, under his mentor, the great Reb Chia. Ki Yehuda also the kamid Reb Chia. Amalei havli gavra, give me a man, in other words, a capable man, didachi li matzartoi, who I could rely on him that he's kashering my press. My press, my wine press. The Amalei again, havli gavra, didachi li matzartoi, that he could kasher me my wine press. Amalei l'Rav, so Rav told, Rav Chia told Rav, Zil bahadei, go with him, take care of him. Make sure to do a good job. They don't come complaining to me in the Beis Medrash. So Ozal he went. He saw that the pitch was very smooth, and since it was very smooth, he thought that it was not trod upon. They didn't use it yet with wine because it's so smooth. Now, if it's so smooth and was never used, it's enough to scour it. Amar havadai benigov sagila. This is enough to scour it with hot ashes. But bahadi de ka'azov va'asi, as he was inspecting the wine press, chaza pila mitusei, he saw cracks in the pitch. And he saw that it had wine, the cracks had wine. That means that they already trod upon it. Amar, he said, that means that they already used it. That's not enough to scour. We have to peel off the coating. And Rav said, I understand now why my uncle told me, make sure that they don't complain. This needed very careful scrutiny. And this is what my uncle said to me, see that they're not going to complain about it in the Beis Medrash. Tan Rabbanan. Hagas, a wine press. V'amachetz, Artzko calls a machatz a dipper. It's something that they use to take the wine out from the vat, put it in the funnel, and siphon it off, not siphon is the wrong word, and draw it out into barrels. So hagas v'amachatz v'amashpech shel oivdei kechavim. The press, the dipper, and the funnel of a guy. Rabbi Matir Nigov. Rabbi says you could purify it with scouring it. The Chachamim Oisrim. And the Chachamim say that it's awesome. Scouring is not enough. Umayda Rabbi bekankanim shel oivdei kechavim. Rabbi agrees with the barrels of a guy, Shein Asur, and they're asur because there in the barrels we'll see that your mechnisai lekiyam, you keep it in there a long while. Or more hefresh bein zelazet, what's the difference between the equipment and the barrel? Because zeh machnisa bekiyam, in the barrel they kept the wine a long time, v'zeh ein machnisa lekiyam. V'shel eitz v'shel even, if it's of wood and stone, you're nagev. It's enough to scour it. Now remember, we learned in the Mishnah that if it's wood, you should peel it. V'im hayim mezufafin asurim. It's us. Well, that's consistent with our Mishnah. Yeah, because that's what our Mishnah says. Mezufaf and asura. You have to peel it. Va'atanan, says the Gemara, we learned in our Mishnah, here it says, One second. Let's. Yeah, so here it says Rebbe permits it with scouring, the gas, and the Chachamim Oisrim. So, Vatanan gas shel even shezov sa'ovi kechavim minagva v'hi ta'ira. The Mishnah says that scouring is enough. And there it's talking about where it was pitched. While over here the Brisa says it's a machlokes. Says the Gemara, that's not a problem. Because masnisin deloy darachba. Our Mishnah is talking about where they didn't trod grapes in it. Brisa the darachba. The Brisa is talking about where they did trod grapes in it, and that's why it's not enough to rinse it. That's why it's not enough to scour it, according to the Chacham. Okay. Amamar. Hagas v'amachetz v'amashpech shel oivi kichavim. A press, the dipper and the funnel, Rebbe Mater Beniguv, the Chachamim Oisrim. Vanan Tanan, we said that if it's made out of earthenware, it's not good at all. Vanan Tanan Cheres Afal Pi Shekolaf Es Hazef Es Harizu Asura. Right, it says the Gemara, you're right. Amar Rava Sefer the Masnis in the end of our Mishnah that says that if it's earthenware, it's aser, is taka not going according to the Rebbe, it's only going according to the Chachamim. Asim l'Rabbana. It's not going according to everybody. It's only going according to the opinion of Rabbanan that says that it's aser. Dorish Rava. Now here, Rava uses a language for a wine press that we've never heard before. This is a language we never heard before. Nava. If we didn't have Rashi, we wouldn't know what Nava is talking about. It happens to be a lashon of the Targum. The Targum calls a wine press Navohi. Otherwise, we would not. I would surely not know what this Aramaic word means. Dorish Rava Nava Arsichu. A wine press, you should scald it with boiling water. So, Rava Kiavi Mishada Gulpe Larpanya, when he sent empty jugs to Arpanya, since he didn't want the goyim to use the jugs, because then they would keep the wine in their lekiyum and it would become aser, he held that it had to be sealed. Sachif lahu apumayhu. He turned the barrels upside down in the sack. V'chosim lu abirtzayu. And he put the seal on the top of the sack parallel to their bottoms. Because kasavar kol davar shemachniса lekiyum, anything which they would store things in to keep, not just temporarily. Afilu lefi shah gazer Rabbana. Even the Rabbana were geyser that it would become aser even if it's for a short period by a guy. And therefore, if you want that the barrels should be these barrels should be able to be used, you have to send them in a seal. Now, we've been using this strange terminology to dry it out. Menagvan literally means dry it out. B'meh menagvan, Rav Amar b'mayim, Rav says water, Rabba Babachana Amar b'efer, with hot ash. Rav Amar b'mayim says Gemara b'mayim v'loy b'efer, water and not ash. Rabba Babachana Amar b'efer, do you think it means b'efer v'loy b'mayim, with ash and not water? Ella says the Gemara, Rav Amar b'mayim v'hu adin leifer. Use water and you also use ash. Rabba Babachana Amar leifer with ash v'hu adin l'mayim. V'loy pligi. But they're not arguing why one says water first and why one says ash first. Haber tifta, if it was moist, they scour it with hot ash and then they rinse it off with water. Haber yabeshta, if it's dry, first they rinse it and then they apply the hot ash. Itmar be Rav Mishrei de Rav. It was said in the Karim Rav, in the name of Rav, Mishmei de Rav Omrei, Tarte Tlas, either 2 or 3. If it's dry, they rinse it and then they apply the hot ash. No, the other way around. If it's wet, they apply the hot ash and then they rinse it. Tlas is if it was dry, they rinse it, they apply the hot ash, and then they rinse it again. So let's look at Rashi, Tarte Tlas. Beritifta Tarte. If it's wet, then it's 2. Because it's wet, they apply the ash and then they rinse it with water. A for a mine. Biyabeshta, if it's dry, then Tlas. They first rinse it with water, then with Afer, then the hot ash, and then Mayim, then they rinse it off again. That's the opinion that you only have to apply ash once. But there's an opinion that you have to apply ash twice. V'Shmuel Amar Tlas Daled. Shmuel says 3 and 4, meaning that if it's moist, so then they apply the ash, they rinse it, and then they apply the ash again. Hold on. Right. Rashi says, Tlas Dalit, Tlas Beritifta. If it's moist, they do Afer, ash, umayim, then they rinse it, and then Afer again. And 4 is if it's not wet, they rinse it, they use ash, they rinse it, and then they use ash. Now, in both of these, 3 and 4, after the second ash, they rinse it again. But there, since the rinsing is for cleanliness, it's not counted. Let's see this inside, as we welcome in Richard Rosenzweig for our 30th Zoomer of the evening. Welcome, Richard. Look at the Rashi, Tlas v'Dalet, Tlas beritifta, 3 if it's moist already, Afer, they scour with hot ash, then mayim, then water, and then Afer, and then ash again. Now the truth of the matter is, after they do that, they rinse it off, but that's not the purification process, that's just cleanliness. To remove the ash, that water is not counted, that's not for the purification, V'dalid biyabeshte, and 4 where it's dry. If it's dry, then they do mayim, and afer. And again, the water afterwards, they don't count. The mayim basroi loy chashiva. Now, The difference is Rav only needs A for once and Shmuel needs A for twice. Now that's the way that's the way they taught it B'Surah Masnachi. That's the way they taught it in Surah. In Pumbedisa they counted the rinsing for cleanliness also. So then if it was wet, it would be ash, water, ash, and then water to rinse it off. That's 4. If it was dry, it would be water, ash, and then water. It would be 5. So, Pumbedisa Masne Beirav Imre Mishmei Derav Tlas Dalit 3 and 4. That's not counting the last rinsing. Vishmul Amar Dalit Vehei 4 and 5, and he counts the last rinsing for cleanliness. V'loy pligi marka choshev maya basroi. One counts the last rinsing. Omar loy choshev maya basroi. So really, it is 4 and 5 if you count the last rinsing. So if it's dry, they first introduce water, then ash, then water, then ash, and then water. Then it's 5. If it was wet, then they just do ash, water, and that is 4. Rabbi Say, once again, another daf in the books. Again, we did the Mishnah Yomis already earlier this evening. I just want to remind you again that we have upcoming a new Masechta on Wednesday night when we will learn Masechtas Huriyas. Please invite friends to join us for a Masechta that we will do in 13 days. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening. Shelley, did you send me the stuff already?